There we go. Yeah, I know I'm horrible at this, y'all. Right. Wait for a couple people to get in here, and we get started on this lesson today. The end of an era. What up, Cam? Good to see you, brother. How you doing there today? Hope you having a good day, brother. Congratulations on the Lord calling you into your own Facebook thing, man. I'm excited about that, brother. I can't wait to see you get started. That's gonna be pretty awesome. I can't wait to see you get started, man. And if I'm not still running my mouth on Monday night, I try to join in on yours. But how everybody doing today? Thank you all for coming in. So just a couple of seconds later, I had to jump in the shower real quick. Just felt, one of them days you just feel nasty. I need to get a shower because I sleep in on Saturdays, and a lot of time I just get up real late. So I just wanted to make sure I got that done before I get to talking to y'all today. But I'm done. I'm ready to get into this lesson, and we get to finish up this series that we started about 2 weeks ago called "A Haters Gonna Hate." We get to, you know what I'm saying? We get to finish it up. It's the end of an era. I really enjoyed this series. I hope y'all have enjoyed it. I hope y'all have seen the blessings from it that you get and learn the lessons from it. Because the main point of this whole lesson, this whole series, is show you two things. One, a hater's gonna hate you for no matter what you do, good or bad. There's gonna be somebody that hates you for the things you do. So it's best to just be who you are and just continue on doing the work that God has for you to do. That's one of the main things. And the second thing is to watch yourself. If you get caught up in being a hater, that's not a good thing, because we're gonna see today as we finish up the story the victory that Mordecai and Esther is gonna get over Haman because he hated on them for being a faithful servants of God. So today I'm gonna start off with the review. Now it's gonna be a little bit of a longer review than I would normally do, but it's because I'm kind of reviewing the series as a whole. Because like I said, this is gonna be the last live of this series, so I'm going to kind of doing the series as a whole. So the review is going to be a little bit longer than normal, but the chapters are not going to be as long. So we still should have about the average time that I would normally run on one of these videos. So we go back to the beginning of the series. Haters gonna hate. We looked in the first three parts. We looked at the life of Joseph. And again, I'm not gonna go back through the story of Joseph, but I am gonna review over the points and all the points that we saw as we went through that story of Joseph. First thing, it was seven hating points, I guess you would call them. Seven things that we saw that a person will hate you because of. The first thing we saw, a haters gonna hate you for doing the right thing. We saw that in Joseph's life. He always did the right thing, right things. He did what his father told him to do, and and his brothers didn't have the ability to do the same thing. So because of that, they hated on him because of that thing. So that's why I say, just do the right thing. No matter what you do, good or bad, somebody's gonna hate on you. So just continue to do the right thing, especially if you know it's of God. Number two, we saw that a hater's gonna hate you because of the favor that God placed in your life. And again, we saw Joseph's life. He had favor on his life. And as we went through the story, everything he did, he got blessed. He was always successful in everything he did, and people hated him for that. And of course, his brothers, the main ones that supposed to be loving him, they hated him because of the power that he had on his life. He was his dad's favorite, and they couldn't stand it. And again, he was one of the youngest as well, so that's another reason. Because if you understand that culture back then, the oldest was the one supposed to got all the respect and the props, and the youngest got the least amount of respect. But in this case, because Joseph was the one that always did right, he got the most amount of respect, and his brothers didn't like that because he was one of the youngest. Number three, we saw another aspect of hate. We saw a hater gonna hate you just because you dream bigger than them. Joseph had these dreams. God gave Joseph these dreams that one day that his brothers and even his mom and dad was gonna bow down to him. And he told his brothers and his mom and dad of the dreams, and they hated him because of it. And they said at one point his daddy even rebuked him because of it. So, you got big dreams. Watch who you share your dreams with. Everybody is not for you. Everybody don't want to see you succeed. And you got to understand that you got to be able to weed the ones out that want to see you succeed and the ones that's just going to hate on you. But, a hater's going to hate. And number four, we saw haters going to hate because you're successful. And again, Joseph was successful in everything he did, and that's why his brothers hated him. They spent so much time hating on him, and it said at one point that they hated him so much they couldn't even say a kind word to him. So a hater's gonna hate because you're successful. So don't let them haters stop your success. Number 5, we saw the haters that's gonna hate you are most likely gonna be the people that's closest to you, and that's a sad state of affairs in the human nature. But it happens. Most of the people that's hating on you is gonna be the ones that's closest to you or supposed to be closest to you. And we even saw how Jesus had haters, and we saw that most of the people that hated on Jesus was what? The Pharisees and Sadducees. The very people that was supposed to be leading people to God was the very one that was hating on God, so to speak. So the haters that's going to hate you in your word are going to be the ones closest to you. They're going to probably be the ones, and the crazy part about it is they're most likely going to be the ones that benefit the most from your success. But yet they're going to be the main ones that's going to hate on you. So you got to be careful with that. Watch who you tell your dreams to, and watch the people you hang around, because those most likely going to be the main ones that's going to hate on you. Number 6, we saw haters going to hate you just because you are where you're supposed to be at. You're where you're supposed to be in life, doing the things you're supposed to be doing, and a hater's going to hate you. And again, it all stems from them having the lack of ability or discipline or wisdom they need to do the things that you're doing. So they hate on you instead of improving themselves, looking for ways to improve themselves and get the same kind of wisdom. They just hate on you because you have the wisdom to do these things. So you got to understand that they're going to hate you because you are where you're supposed to be. And again, we saw that with Joseph. Joseph's brothers was supposed to be somewhere feeding the sheep, and they wasn't there when the dad sent Joseph to go look for him because it took longer than they were supposed to get back. And when he went to find them, they weren't where they were supposed to be at. And Joseph was right where he was supposed to be at, and they weren't. And again, we know later on when he found them what they did to him, they ended up selling him into slavery. And then also the last aspect of hate that we saw that came out of the story of Joseph when we went through that story, the last story that we saw was a hate is going to hate you for trying to faithfully serve God. And we saw that happen when Joseph was working in Potiphar's house. He was doing everything he's supposed to. He was working. He had accepted his God's will for his life. That he had to go through these things to bring honor and glory to God. And he was working faithfully. Everything was going good. And then Potiphar's wife wanted to get at him, and he wouldn't have no part of it. And one, he did out of respect, but two, he said, "Look, that'll be a tragedy toward God. I can't disrespect my God like that by doing something that's evil." And she hated that, and she snatched his shirt off of him. And then she went and said because she had a shirt that he tried to rape her, he ended up in prison. But again, we know that God was with him through all of this. And because Joseph stayed faithful amongst the hate, which would have been hard for me to do, I know, and it shows you the strength of Joseph. But because he stayed faithful through all the hate, he ended up being successful, and he got these rewards. So now I want to go over the rewards that we pointed out as we went through the life of Joseph. Again, this is just a review because this is the last day of the series, so I want to make sure we touch on everything that we went over because it's been 6 episodes in 2 weeks. So just a kind of reminder of everything that we've discussed so far, and then this story today is going to sum everything up. So then we saw some of the rewards that Joseph received because he stayed faithful amongst the hate. We saw that he had God's grace and God's blessings on his life. Again, we saw everything he did, he was blessed. Everything that he did, he was successful because he had God's blessing on his life. Everywhere he went, everything all of a sudden started running smoothly because he was in charge of it, because he had God's grace. And that was also because of God's favor. He had God's favor on his life. You notice each time he was in a different position, it said all of a sudden he was the favorite. He was his dad's favorite. He was Potiphar's favorite. So Potiphar put him in charge of his whole household. When he went to jail, he was the warden's favorite. So the warden put him in charge of the jail. He has God's favor on his life because he stayed faithful. We also saw he had God's power on his life. We saw where he had success in all his endeavors, and we also saw that he had God's wisdom. And all that came to play when he was in the jail. He had the guys had the dream. He had the power to tell these guys and the wisdom to tell these guys what these dreams meant. He was able to interpret these dreams, and then we saw that he kept getting elevated to the land, and eventually he became the second most powerful man in the land of Egypt, but which was equates to the most powerful man in the world, because at the time Egypt was the center of the world. So we saw these 5 great rewards that Joseph received because he stayed faithful, even though he was being hated on. So again, we saw God's grace, we saw God's favor, we saw God's power, we saw success in all his endeavors, and we also saw God's wisdom. And that was in the first episode that we did. So then in part 2 and 3, we covered some other rewards that came up a little bit later on as Joseph's story went by. we saw the number 6 reward that we saw. We saw he had a freedom from the bondage of the hate. Because we got to understand that hate holds us down. It holds us back. When you got the anger in your heart to somebody, or hatred, or bitterness, or you holding a grudge against somebody, that actually holds you back. You know, that anger and that bitterness. I think I've made the statement, but it says anger is the only. I think it's not anger. What I'm looking for. But it's that the anger and that bitterness is the only poison that kills its own vessel. In other words, you holding that anger and that hate in your heart, it hurts you more than it hurts the person that is supposed to be directed toward. So you got to realize that. But Joseph had a freedom from that bondage of that hate, and he let that hate go. Even though his brother was hating on him, he let it go. He accepted God's will, and he just kept doing what he could do the best in this situation. And because of that, we saw number 7, he got elevated. Again, he kept getting elevated in the kingdom, and he got elevated when he was in Potiphar's house. And then he ended up going to prison. He got elevated when he was in prison. And then, of course, he came out of prison when Pharaoh had this dream. And he was able to interpret the dream to Pharaoh. And he got elevated to being the second most powerful man in the world. So, again, elevation, that comes from God. And you get that by staying faithful to God. Number 8, we saw where he had a humble heart. Everything that he went through, even with the power he got, he never said, I did this, or I was great because of this. He always made sure to say, God did this. Even when he was talking to his brothers at the end of the story, he said, God did this to me so I can protect you all, so I can save you all from this famine that was coming on the land. And then number 9, we saw and this is one we're going to really hit on a lot tonight as we finish up the story of Mordecai, Esther, and Haman. We saw that he had victory over his haters. We saw that he had victory over his haters because of because of what he went through. He stayed faithful to God. He got that victory. And we saw toward the end of the story of Joseph where his brothers, eventually had to come back into him. Exactly. They always get vindicated. Exactly, brother. So we saw where he was vindicated, and his brothers end up, and they came. And the crazy part was the very dream that he had that started all the hate was exactly what happened when they came to him. And when we went through the story, we saw, Joseph told them one day they're gonna bow down to him, and that's why they hated him. And we saw toward the end of the story, they bowed down to him like 5 times. You know what I'm saying? So he was vindicated because he was in the right and they was in the wrong, and God put them in his hand, but he was able to get victory over his haters because he stayed faithful. So then we saw because of that, he was able to get glory to God with his life. Because he stayed faithful, he was able to get glory to God with his life, and it was able to be apparent that God was on him. Matter of fact, Pharaoh said, that God is obviously with this guy. So the way he lived his life, he was able to get glory to God with his life. And that's why Pharaoh even recognized that, hey, this man had God on him. And then number 11, the 11th reward that we saw from him staying faithful, he had the ability to forgive. Because when he came to his brothers, especially toward the end of the story after his dad died, his brothers came and they were like, well, Dad said, you should forgive us for this. And he told us, man, look, don't worry about me. We ain't got no beef. He said, yeah, what y'all did, y'all meant it for evil, but God turned it into good. He said, God did this to me. Y'all didn't do this to me, but he did it to me so I can go through all these things so I can save my people. And that's what we got to understand. When we go through all the hate and the problems and the bitterness that we face as servants of God, we got to realize that's God putting us through that so we can be the blessing to our people that we need to be. Because we see here, and we're going to see it again in this story here, because Joseph stayed faithful throughout all the hate and didn't get bitter about it and then try to take his own revenge he just put in God's hand. He was able to save the whole nation of Israel. He was able to save his whole family, and not only the family, he was eventually able to save the world because, he understood that the famine was coming and he made preparation for the famine, and that's how Egypt made it through the famine, and therefore the world made it through the famine because he was able to forgive. So and when I summarized it, it was 4 things that I saw from that story of Joseph. Hayden made him an outcast amongst his brothers and his family. Hayden made him a slave. Hayden made him a prisoner, but his faith in God made him a king and gave him victory over his haters. And the same thing will happen to us. Haters going to make us an outcast society. They call us the weirdos because they don't get it because they're natural people. They don't understand spiritual things. Hayden may make us might not necessarily make us a slave, but haters will make us an outcast to society. It makes us the prisoners of our faith almost, because we can't do the things that we want to do or say the thing we want to say because of the judgment that the world put upon us. So sometimes it's halt some Christians for doing the things that they supposed to be doing, saying the thing they supposed to be saying, because they're afraid of how the world's going to react. So, in that aspect, it does make us a slave and a prisoner of our belief. But again, if we stay faithful like Joseph did, we will end up being the kings and we will get the victory over our haters. And remember, I said it was 3 reasons why Joseph was able to do those things and get that victory that he got. And it was these 3 things, and it's going to end the review on the book of Joseph, the life of Joseph. 3 things that he did that helped him get that victory. He had the right attitude about it. He accepted God's will, and he stood on the promises of God. Those are the things that got him through that hate. Those are the things that got him through that bad situation he was in. And because of those things, he had a major victory, and God blessed his life. So that was the first 3 episodes. Those kind of a short review on those first 3 episodes that started this whole series. So then after that, we went into the story in the book of Esther, and we had 2 episodes on that. Now that I will get into the details of that story a little bit more, just because in fact we're going to finish that up today. But remember, it all started where the king he had this huge party basically, and him. I mean, the party lasted for like 6 months, and then he had another party that lasted for like a week, where he had all his servants and everything attend, and he wanted his wife to come out and put the crown on her head and kind of parade herself around in front of these drunk men, and she said she wouldn't do it. So he got upset with her and found a way to get rid of her. He wanted to get rid of her. And they told him to get rid of her and find him a new queen. And they had this kind of, actually, it's kind of a filthy little contest, basically, he had between all the virgins of the land. Because they told him to go out and find the most beautiful virgins of the land and basically sleep with all of them. And whichever one pleased him the most, that was the one he was going to get to, he was make queen. And remember, again, I pointed out to y'all that I think Queen Vashti, she was like the hero of the story, because she did what she was supposed to do. She had enough self-respect for herself and for her husband and for who she was as a woman, that she refused to go parade herself around in front of these drunk men. So I really look at her as the hero of the story. But of course, this story kind of makes out to be the bad guy. But because she did that, it set into a certain amount of events. And when the king had this contest, so to speak, where he was trying to find the best version to please him or whatnot, this woman Esther ended up being taken into this contest. And this woman Esther was a Jew, and she had an uncle named Mordecai that had taken care of her as his own daughter. And he had taken care of her and raised her as his own daughter because her mom and dad died. And I'm assuming they died during the war, when Israel was captured. And that's how she ended up becoming one of Haman's relatives, being under his care, so to speak. So when this contest was over, she ended up winning the spot to be queen. And of course, Mordecai told her when she went in not to reveal the fact that she was a Jew. He told her not to reveal the fact that she was a Jew because he didn't, didn't feel it was necessary for them to know at that point in time. And plus, the Jews, they were captives in the land. They were captives and they were slaves. So I'm really thinking he just wanted her to have a fair trial to get the position, so to speak. So after this little contest was over, she won the contest. So then we see where after a little bit after she became queen, that Mordecai, which was her uncle, he had kind of got promoted and started working in the palace as well. But it was a small position. It wasn't nothing major. He was just one of the lower officials in the palace. And there was this plot that came up to kill the king. And Mordecai found out about it. So he went and told Esther, which was his niece. He told her about it. She took it to the king, reported to the king, and they did an investigation. And when they did the investigation, they found out that it was true, that they was planning on killing the king. So, but nothing, he never did really reward Mordecai for what happened. So then, that was chapters 1 and 2. So then in chapter 3, we see this guy named Haman come into play. This guy named Haman, he comes into play, and it says he was the second most powerful man in the land. He was the prime minister, so he was the most powerful man in the land next to the king himself. So he was the second most powerful man in the land, and he came to play. And there was this law that said that the king officials would bow down before Haman to show him respect whenever he passed by, for so the king had commanded. But Mordecai refused to bow down and show him respect. So everybody else did this. They bowed down and showed him respect. But Mordecai wouldn't do it because, of course, we know as Christians you don't supposed to bow down or serve anybody else outside the Lord. So he wouldn't do it, and that infuriated Haman, and it infuriated him to a point to where he hated Mordecai so much that he wanted to kill him. Not only kill him, he wanted to kill all the Jews in the land, all the Jews in the province of Asia, which was been in the world, because again, the king was the king of the world, the known world at that time. So he wanted to kill all the Jews everywhere. So he became this enemy of the Jews. So when he did that, he started putting into this plot to kill all these Jews. He went to the king and told the king, matter of fact, he said, there is a certain race of people scattered through all the provinces of your empire, and their laws are different from those of any other nation, and they refuse to obey even the laws of the king. So if it is not in the king's interest to let them live. So if it please your majesty, issue a decree that they may be destroyed, and I will give 375 tons of silver to the government administrators so they can put it into the royal treasury. So he wanted to pay the king to give him the ability to kill all the Jews, because in fact he hated Mordecai because he was a Jew and he wouldn't bow down to him. So that set off a series of events, and he put into plan, and the king didn't know no different. He didn't realize that his wife was a Jew, and he didn't know no different. He was indifferent to it, so he was basically like, well, if they such a danger, then yeah, go ahead and do what you need to do. He said, but keep your own money. So then he gave Haman his signet ring and told him to issue out a decree, and he sent out this decree. He said, these letters were signed in the name of King Xerxes and sealed with his ring and sent by messengers into all the provinces of the empire. The letters decreed that all Jews, young and old, including women and children, must be killed, slaughtered, and annihilated on a single day. And this was scheduled to happen nearly a year later on March the 7th, and the property of the Jews would be given to those who killed them. So he went out and he came up with this plot and put out this decree that would kill all the Jews. He noticed it was men, women, children, nobody. He didn't want anybody to live. He wanted to eradicate them because he had so much hatred in his heart against this guy Mordecai. And the crazy part about it is, Haman was the second most powerful man in the land. He had the status. He had, he would have been what we consider a celebrity. He had money. He had riches. He had family. He had everything a man could want. But instead of enjoying what he had, enjoying the blessings that God had given him, he was hating on this other man, Mordecai, who really had nothing. And really, as far as status is concerned, Mordecai wasn't even on his level, but yet he hated him because he felt he was better than him. So that's why we saw, and when we went through the lessons on that, we saw a couple of more aspects of hate come up. We saw, so altogether we had 9 aspects of hate that we looked at over these two life stories of these men. Number 8 came up in this story with Haman. A hater's going to hate you simply for being who you are. Haman hated him just because he was a Jew. But because Mordecai was a Jew, he wouldn't bow down to him because he was obeying the laws of God. And we also saw number 9, that a hater's going to hate you because they feel they was better than you. And that's why he hated Mordecai, because he felt he was better than Mordecai and he deserved Mordecai respect, and Mordecai wouldn't give it to him. And he hated him because of that. So, again, we saw that a hater's going to hate because you faithfully serve God. Mordecai didn't bow down to him because you don't bow down to anybody outside the Lord your God. That's the very first commandment. So, when this happened, and of course Mordecai, he was upset about it, and he went to Esther and told her that, hey, she need to do something about it. Now he said, when the letter went out, all the Jews of the land, they were sad because there was pretty much a law put into place to take their lives. All of them was going to die. All of them was going to have to die. And they had a lot of enemies in the kingdom because people have always hated on the Jews. If you look throughout history, look at what happened back in Egypt. People have always hated on the Jews. Even in more recent history, the Holocaust and all that, people have always hated on the Jews. So they had a lot of enemies. They had a lot of people that wanted to kill them. And therefore, that when this letter went out, they were sad because I'm pretty sure there was a lot of people talking crap to him and saying, making threats to him, what they were going to do to him when that day came around, which was March the 7th. So what Mordecai did, he went and put on his mourning clothes, and he went and stood outside the palace gate. And he couldn't go into the palace to do his work because he was in mourning clothes, and those wasn't allowed in the palace. So when Esther went and back and forth, and like I said, I'm not going to go through all the details. Y'all can go back and read it, but I do want to hit the high points. When Esther sent and asked him what was going on, he explained to her what had been put out, and he told her she needed to do something about it. Now, initially, she was like, nah, I don't want to, because it was against the law for anybody to go in to see the king if they wasn't summoned. And if they went in to see the king and they wasn't summoned, and the king didn't accept them in there by holding out his scepter, then they had to die. So she was afraid of her own life, and Mordecai had to remind her, don't forget. I told you not to tell them who you were, but don't forget who you are, and don't think just because you're the queen that you're going to be safe too from this. He said when this go out, and he even told her, he said, don't think for a moment that you escape there in the palace when all the other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance from the Jews would arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. And what's more is who can say but that you have been elevated into this palace for such a time as this. And when she said that, Mordecai said that to her, sent that message to her, she agreed. She said, go and tell all the other Jews of Susha to fast from me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day, and my maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. And if I must die, I am willing to die. So right there, we saw some more rewards come up in this story that shows you the importance of being faithful to God. Now, in this story, we had 6 rewards that we see that Esther and Mordecai received. First of all, once again, we saw God's favor because she is going to go into the king and he's going to hold out his scepter so she's not killed. We saw wisdom, the way Esther handled the whole situation, and she cold set Haman up. She used her wisdom to set him up and to fight for her people. We saw elevation. We saw that we're going to see that Mordecai, he kept getting elevated in the kingdom, and the queen got elevated herself because of God's grace on them. Number 4, we saw the ability to accept God's will and to put it in his hands. And that's what she did right there. And when she told him, she said, I go in and I talk to the king, and if I must die, then I must die. And then number 5, we had victory over our haters. And we saw that when what happened was, so basically what happened was Esther went to the king, and he held out the scepter, and he asked her what did she want, and he told her, she told him, if it please your majesty, come to me to this banquet that I have prepared for you, and bring Haman with you. So just so happened right at that time, where was it? So Haman, if it please your majesty, let the king and Haman come to a banquet that I have prepared for the king. So then he turned to his attendant and told him to go tell Haman to come to this banquet. So then they went to the banquet. They was drinking and everything and talking. And remember, I told you the reason why I think she set up this initial banquet, because she's going to have 2 banquets in a row. And I believe the reason why she set up this initial banquet is because she wanted to see for herself was Haman really trying to kill them. And they got there and they was talking, and he was talking to the king, and I'm pretty sure he started bringing up his hatred talking toward the Jews, and man, these Jews got to go, this and that and that. So I think after she saw that, then she realized, okay, he really is trying to kill us. So the king asked her, he said, now that we've here, what do you really want? I will give it to you, even if it's half the kingdom. And she replied to the king, she said, well, if it really pleases you, bring you and Haman to come and worship, come to the banquet tomorrow, and I will explain what all this is about. So then when it was over, Haman left, of course, and he was happy. He just got to attend this banquet. It was only him, the king, and the queen. So, I mean, he was in that high cotton. He really felt good about himself at that time. So he said he was a happy man, but his hate wouldn't let him again. That's why I said the hatred is a poison, and it kills his own vessel. Because his hate, even though he just left this banquet of high status, he was with the king and the queen, even though he had this going for him, and said he left, he was a happy man, but when he saw Mordecai sitting at the gate, not standing up or trembling nervously before him, he was furious. So again, instead of him just enjoying the benefits that he had on his life, enjoying the blessing that God had given him, he was still trying to hate on this one guy, this Jew, and that's going to end up being his downfall. So then, what up, Pat? Glad to see you joined us, man. I'm just me and Cam here hanging out, going through the review. Like I said, it's a little bit longer review than I normally would do, but this is the last in the series, so I wanted to cover everything. So I'm glad you was able to join in with us. So we're getting to the point where we start seeing this victory that you'll get over your haters, and we got a huge victory. Mordecai got a huge victory over his haters, because what happened was the next day. He went and talked. Well, he brought all his wife and friends together, and he started boasting about how great he was, how great his family was, how many children he had, and all the honors the king had given him, and how he had been promoted to the highest official in the kingdom. And again, that's something he should have been happy with. He should have been satisfied with that. He had status, he had money, he had family, but he had so much hatred in him that his hatred ended up being his downfall. So he said not only did I have to get to go to this banquet with just the king, he said that's not all. Queen Esther invited me and me only and the king to a banquet tomorrow that she prepared for us, and she only invited me to this dinner. And he said, but all this is meaningless as long as I see Mordecai the Jew just sitting there at the palace gate. So again, this man had everything he could have wanted. He had status, he had favor with the king, but his hatred wouldn't let him go beyond that. His hatred wouldn't be able to let him enjoy the blessings that he had. And that's why I told y'all back in the story of Joseph. See, Joseph was free from that bondage of hate. He didn't hold that hatred in his heart, and that's why he was elevated. But this man Haman had this hatred in his heart, and it's going to end up being his downfall. So then, when he told his family that, they were like, well, why don't you set up this gallows that's 75 feet tall, set it up in your yard, and then tomorrow when you go to see the king, just go ahead and ask the king to hang Mordecai on it. So he's like, yeah. So of course they feasted, celebrating, that sounded good. But then this is where the victory comes in. So the next morning he get up to go see the king. Now just so happened that night the king couldn't sleep. So he got to set up and start reading through the historical records, and he saw that the situation that happened before, where there was a plot to kill him, and Mordecai saved him. So when he realized that, he was like, man, I want to do something for Mordecai. And right at that moment, Haman came in to ask the king to hang Mordecai on his gallows. And right as he did that, he came in. The king said, who is that outside? And they said, it's Haman. So Haman was coming to ask the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows. But when he walked in, the king asked him, said, man, what should I do for somebody that I really want to honor, somebody that I'm really pleased with? And see, because of Haman's pride, he felt, oh, well, who the king want to honor more than me? So what he did was, he said he thought to himself, who the king wished to honor more than me? So he replied, if the king wishes to honor someone, he should bring out one of the king's own royal robes, as well as the king's own horse with a royal emblem on his head. Instruct one of the king's most noble princes to dress the man in the king's robe and to lead him through the city square on the king's own horse. And have the prince shout out as they go, this is what happens to those the king wishes to honor. And the king said, excellent, go and do this for Mordecai. So that was funny, man. I bet he was sick when he said that, because the things that he was saying to do was things that he wanted done to him. But instead, he had to go and do it for the very person that he hated. So again, that's what the Lord would do for you in your life if you stay faithful to him. He would give you victory over your haters. The things that the haters want to do to you, it'll end up being done to them. And we're going to see a little bit more of that today. Matter of fact, this whole chapter, the last 2.5 chapters, is going to be basically this great victory that the Jews get over this man Haman. And everything that he wanted to do to them, the Jews going to end up doing to him and his people. So then Haman had to take Mordecai around, put the robe on him, and do everything he said. And of course, he was embarrassed. So he went back home humiliated. So then when he went back home and told his family what happened, they told him. They gave him good advice. They said, since Mordecai, this man who has humiliated you, is a Jew, you will never succeed in your plans against him, and it will be fatal if you continue to oppose him. So, but then, right as he said that, he said, while they were still talking, the king's eunuchs arrived to take Haman to the banquet Esther had prepared. So it was too late. It was too late. He had already put a plan into action, and it was too late to turn back from it. So then, of course, and to finish up where we finished up and to get us caught up at the last chapter 7. So then he went to the banquet, of course, and they were sitting there drinking, they was talking, and then finally the king told Esther, he said, look, what is going on? I know you got something more. What do you want going on? And we see this final victory that they get over Haman right here. So finally, Esther answered the king. He said, look, she said, if it's pleased with your majesty, if your majesty is pleased with me and wants to grant my request, my petition is that my life and the lives of my people will be spared. For my people and I have been sold to those who would kill, slaughter, and annihilate us. And if we had only been sold as slaves, I could remain quiet, for it would be been a matter too trivial to warrant disturbing the king. And of course, the king was upset, like, who would dare touch you? And Esther said, this wicked man Haman is our enemy. And again, oh man, I only imagine how sick he was when he said that, when she set him up like that. And matter of fact, he said he grew pale with fright before the king and queen. And then the king jumped to his feet and raged and went out of the palace. So of course Haman stayed there and tried to beg for his life. So I can only imagine he was on his knees, grabbing on the queen's the queen's gown, because she said she was reclining on the couch. So he was it said, but Haman stayed behind to plead for his life with the Queen Esther, for he knew that he was doomed. And in despair, he fell on the couch where Queen Esther was reclining, just as the king returned from the palace garden. And when he said, "Will he even assault the queen right here in the palace before my very eyes?" The king roared, and as soon as the king spoke, his attendants covered Haman's face, signaling his doom. It was over for him. So then, to make it even crazy, the crazy part about it, and show you what God would do for you, you stay faithful. Now, of course, Haman had set up this gallows because he wanted to hang Mordecai on it. So look what it said. It said, then in verse 9, it said, then Harbona, one of the king's eunuchs, said, Haman had set up a gallows that stands 75 feet tall in his own courtyard. He intended to use it to hang Mordecai, the man who saved the king from it. And the king said, hang him on it. So again, y'all, Romans, and I'm going to repeat it again later, it said, if God is for you, who can be against you? So that's why it's so important to continue to build your relationship with God. The people are going to hate on you. Haters are going to hate. Pat, I remember at one point through this series, you asked me, how can you stop the hate? You can't stop the hate. No matter what you do, somebody's going to hate you for who you are or any other kind of reason. Only thing you can do is just keep on serving the Lord, and you will get those rewards that I talked about. And there was another reward that we saw over in the last section that we went through. The fear of the Lord will be upon you. And that's what's going to happen. We're going to see that come today. So that was the review. I'm sorry it was so long, but like I said, I had to capture the whole series because this is the last episode of the series. So I wanted to go over the whole series and then get us caught up to where we at. So where we at today, it starts now. Haman, of course, has been found out. He's been hung on the gallows. And now we're going to see this great victory that the Jews is going to get because of Haman and Esther's faithfulness to God, even amongst the hate. So I'm going to go ahead and pray, and we're going to get started to finish this series up. Dear Lord of Heavenly Father, come to you today. Thank you so much for watching over us, Lord. Thank you for giving us another beautiful day on this earth. Thank you for letting us make it through last night and giving us breathing breath into the breath of life into our lungs this morning, and getting us up to have another day of serving your purpose and your will. And I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity this evening to come forth to spread your word, Lord, so we can finish up the story of Mordecai and Esther and just this series overall of seeing that the hate is going to hate, Lord. And I pray that the message will be relayed that I tried to bring out with this story, Lord, that the important thing is to stand faithful to you, because no matter what we do, if we stay faithful to you, the world is going to hate us. We're going to have people in our lives who are going to hate us, and they're going to hate us because of the favor that you show upon us. They're going to hate us because we're doing the things we're supposed to be doing. They're going to hate us because you got us in the right direction, and they don't have the discipline to do it themselves or the willpower to do it themselves. So instead of bettering themselves, they're going to hate us, Lord. So I pray that you help the people to see the importance of just staying faithful to your word amongst the hate and just putting it all in your hand. And if we do that, we will get the victory over our haters. So I pray you send your spirit down upon me as I prepare to finish up this lesson that I've done on haters gonna hate. I pray you just give me your wisdom to bring out the most important points so that people can see the importance of staying faithful to you amongst the hate. And I pray that you also be with the ones that's watching this video or listening in or maybe listening in later, Lord. Just humble their heart and get their hearts prepared to receive this lesson that we're going to go over here today. I just ask you to continue to bless us and guide us and keep us safe and give us the wisdom we need and your spirit we need so we may study your word wholeheartedly. We love you and thank you for everything. And say this prayer in your wonderful son, in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so again, let me get a sip of water. I'm talking too much already. So again, one of the last rewards that we saw was it was number 5. It was victory over your haters, and we're gonna see this major victory. Now check this out. So God has already, he's already, killed Haman. First of all, he put Haman in a position where he had to honor Mordecai. Mordecai, the things that Haman wanted, Mordecai was able to get, and he had to go around and honor Mordecai. Then we saw where God put it in position where when Haman tried to have Mordecai killed, the very instrument that he wanted to use to kill Mordecai, he ended up being hung on himself. So now check out this again. I tell you, this is how good my God is, and this is why I serve God the way I do, man, because God is great. And he will fight for you if you put your faith and trust in him. Don't go out there and stoop to these people's level. Don't try to go out there and hate on them because they're hating on you. Don't go out there and try to be vengeful to them because of what they've done to you. Man, just let it slide. Jesus said, when somebody said, give your enemies a cup of water if you see them thirsty. Give your enemies food to eat if they're hungry. If they're cold, give them something to wear. He said, in doing that, you're heaping coals upon their heads. So that's what you should do, and that's what Joseph did. Now Esther, she's a little bit different. She's a woman. Joseph was a guy, and y'all know any of you guys know that deal with women. It's hard to deal with a woman scorn, buddy. And we're gonna see here that she's gonna actually be pretty brutal. So watch what the God do for the Israelites, because these people try to take them out, because they're God's people. The Israelites are God's people, and we got to understand that. And I told y'all before, the Lord said, anybody that bless the Israelites, I will bless them. But anybody that's the enemy of the Israelites, I will be an enemy to them. So watch what happened, because Haman was the enemy of the Jews. So watch what the Lord do to him. So we're going to start today. We're going to be in chapter 8, 9, and 10 to finish up the story. And again, I'm going to be reading out the New Living Translation. I believe in the King James, but because of my ministry, because of my target market, I read out the New Living Translation just to make sure everybody understand the points that I'm trying to make. So in verse 8, chapter 8, verse 1, it says, so on that same day, so this is the same day that Haman was hung on the gallows that he intended to hang Mordecai on. Now check this out. It show you how great God is and what God will do if you just put your faith and trust in him. And I love this. It said on the same day that King Xerxes gave, on that same day, King Xerxes gave the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, to Queen Esther. Then Mordecai was brought before the king, for Esther had told the king how they were related. And the king took off his signet ring, which he had taken back from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed Mordecai to be in charge of Haman's property. So what happened? The very things that Haman was cherishing, the very thing that he was doing all this stuff to get, the very thing that made him feel important, guess what happened? It was taken from him and given to Mordecai. Why? Because he wasn't happy with what he had. See, had he been happy with what he had, his life would have been great. Yeah, Mordecai wasn't bound down to you, but man, look at all the stuff that you had. Look at all the he had every benefit. He had more benefits than anybody in the land. He had everything he could ever want, but yet he wasn't happy. He wasn't satisfied because of the hatred in his heart. And that's why I'm telling y'all, man, do not harbor hatred against anybody, because that's what'll happen to you. Because next thing you know, you'll become a hater. And look at what happens to haters. So everything that Haman had was taken away from him and given to the very people that he hated. See, people talk about karma and all that. And I don't believe in karma, but I do believe in God's will. I do believe in God's providence, and God was protecting his people. And he said he would always protect his people. And Mordecai was one of God's people. The Israelites were God's people. So God was protecting his people, and he was protecting them from the very people that hated him. So now he's taking everything that Haman had and giving it to the very people that he was hating on. See, that's God right there. That's what happened when you put the battle in God's hand. God will take care of you, because again, in Romans, if God is for you, who can be against you? So then in verse 3, it says, now once more Esther came before the king, falling down at his feet and begging him with tears to stop Haman's evil plot against the Jews. And again, the king held out the gold scepter to Esther. So again, we still seeing this favor that she has on her life. Because again, she could have went in there, and had he not held out the scepter, she would have been killed. But because she still had God's favor on her life, she went in there and he held out the scepter. He held out the scepter to her. So now this next verse, this next little verse, this little section here is going to show you why it's so important to be faithful to God. Because it really benefits the people in your world when you're faithful. Because check it out. It says, so he held out the scepter to Esther. So she rose and stood before him and said, if your majesty is pleased with me, and if he thinks it is right, send out a decree reversing Haman's evil orders to destroy the Jews throughout all the provinces of the king. For how can I endure to see my people and my family slaughtered and destroyed? So what happened? Just like in the story of Joseph, Joseph endured, stayed faithful to the end. He was able to save his family and his whole nation. And guess what? Once again, it was able to be done again by Esther, because she stayed faithful. She kept her trust in the Lord. See what I'm saying? So that's why it's so important, man. We don't realize the people in our world that we can help. We don't realize the people in our world that we can save by just doing what we're supposed to be doing for God. Being faithful to God. There's somebody in your world right now. I tell people all the time, there's somebody in your world right now that's dependent upon you being faithful to God. And you might not think that you're a good Christian at all. And I know, Pat, I know you said you've had some questions. You might not think you're a very good Christian at all, but you got to understand, to somebody in your world, you're the best Christian they know. So that's why it's so important for, yeah, you should keep trying to improve yourself, work on, we all got flaws. I got flaws as well, things I need to work on, and I try to work on them every day because there's somebody somewhere in this world that needs me to be faithful to the Lord. It's somebody in this world that needs me to be the good Christian that I know I can be if I just continue to put my work in at it. It's to somebody in your world, you're the best Christian they know. And if you are doing what you're supposed to be doing and lead by example, they'll follow you and they'll come to the Lord as well because of what they see you doing. That's why it's so important. And you can save so many people in your world, and we don't realize that. And that's what Esther was able to do. She was able to go before the king. She was able to go before the king and plead with the king to save the life of her people. Because her people, this decree is still in order. On March 7th, her people are supposed to be destroyed. And y'all remember when we talked about back in chapter 1, it says once an order is put out by the king of the Medes and the Persians, it can't be revoked. So he can't revoke this order to have the Jews killed. Like, because it's already been put out, he's already signed it, so he can't revoke it. But again, God is at play here, and he's gonna make a way for them to protect themselves. So check out verse number 7. It says in verse 7, it said, "Then King Mordecai said to Queen Esther and Mordecai the Jew, I have given Esther the estate of Haman, and he has been hung on the gallows because he tried to destroy the Jews." So again, what was his fault? He was going against the people of God. He was fighting against God's people, and that was his downfall. He had everything, man. There was no reason for him to be doing what he's doing, trying to eradicate the Jews. He had everything. They was nothing to him as far as status in the kingdom, but yet he just was not happy with who he was. He wasn't satisfied with what he had. He wanted more, and it ended up being his downfall. And it says because he was the enemy of the Jews, he was hung on the gallows. And see, that's what happened when you go against God's people. When you go against God's people, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. You know what I'm saying? I know the way it looks in this world right now, it looks like God's people is losing, but not. We're winning. We're winning because the thing you got to understand is if you're really saved and you know 100% you're going to heaven, when you look at this world and all that we go through in this world, you got to understand something. This is the worst it'll ever be for us. You know, because when we die, we go to somewhere we get to live for eternity in happiness and peace, and we get to live in the presence of God. But for people that's not saved, those God haters, the ones that's trying to get us off our path, the one that's trying to eradicate us, this world, as bad as it is, it's the best it'll ever be for them. Because when they die, they go somewhere way worse. So we already had the victory. Yeah, we might not have a status. Like, Mordecai didn't have a status at the time. He didn't have the status that Haman had. He didn't have the money that Haman had. He didn't have the family and all that. But he had God. So he had enough. And that's what we got to understand, man. As long as you got God, as long as you know you one of God's people, you're good. You know what I'm saying? You're good. Yeah, you might not be the best one of God's servant. Yeah, it might be some things you still need to work on. But as long as you know you one of God's people, as long as you know your faith and trust is in the Lord, then you're good. And that's what happened here. And that's why they was protected. And that's what he told him. He said, I've given Esther the estate of Haman, and he has been hanged on the gallows because he tried to destroy the Jews. In other words, he was fighting against God's people. And that's why he died. He was fighting against God's people. He was trying to destroy God's people. That's why he died. So then in verse 8 it says, "Now go ahead and send a message to the Jews in the king's name, telling them whatever you want, and seal it with the king's signet ring. But remember that whatever is written in the king's name and sealed with his ring can never be revoked." So again, that's what he's saying. Remember, whatever you send out and say, now remember, once it's out there, it can't be revoked. So the one that Haman sent out, it couldn't be revoked. So the everybody in the province of Xerxes, as right now, everybody in his kingdom, they still thinking the Jews gonna die on March the 7th. And again, I'm pretty sure they getting their weapons ready. They've been talking crap. They've been going for, I can't wait. I can imagine, I can't wait to March the 7th. I can't wait. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna do this. I mean, they got in their head they're gonna destroy these Jews. But again, God is at play. The Jews were God's people. So you got to understand, if you're one of God's people, man, you don't have to worry about these enemies. God is going to take care of it. And watch how he take care of it. Check this out. So it said, then on June, in verse 9, it said, on June the 21st, the 25th, the king's secretaries were summoned. As Mordecai dictated, they wrote a decree to the Jews and to the princes, governors, and local officials of all the 127 provinces stretching from India to Ethiopia. The decree was written in the scripts and languages of all the peoples of the empire, including the Jews. Mordecai wrote in the name of King Xerxes and sealed the message with the king's signet ring. He sent the letters by swift messengers, who rode horses especially bred for the king's service. The king's decree gave the Jews in every city authority to unite to defend their lives. They were allowed to kill, slaughter, and annihilate anyone of any nationality or province who might attack them or their children and wives, and to take the property of their enemies. The day chosen for this event throughout all the provinces of King Xerxes was March the 7th on the next year. So what happened? The very thing that Haman wanted to do to the Jews, now the Jews got permission to do to them. You see what I'm saying? And it was also decreed for March the 7th. See, at first, the Jews didn't have the authority to fight back. You know, they were just told, basically, you have to die. They didn't have the authority to fight back. But now the king put out a decree saying you can fight back. Anybody that wanted to kill you, anybody that's your enemy, you can go out and kill them. You know what I'm saying? They got the opportunity to fight back and protect themselves. So then it says in verse 13, a copy of this decree was to be recognized as law in every province and proclaimed to all the people. That way the Jews will be ready on that day to take revenge on their enemies. So what the enemies of God, the God haters, was hoping to do to the servants of God, now instead it backfired on them, and now the Jews get to do it to them. See, again, that's faithfulness right there. That's God showing up in your life. You know, there's going to be people in your world going to have even intentions towards you. They're going to try to do things to knock you off your game. They're going to try to do things to take you out of God's way, to take you out of God's plan. But you just keep on moving forward and let God deal with that. And that's what he did right here. These people that hoped to annihilate them, slaughter them, and kill them and take all their stuff, but now it's reversed. The Jews get the power and authority to do it to their enemies. So it said in verse 14, so it says in verse 14, so urged on by the king's command, the messengers rode out swiftly on horses bred for the king's service, and the same decree was also issued at the fortress of Susha. Now, this fortress of Susha, just so y'all understand, because it's gonna come up again, that's where the king himself lived. That's where the palace was, and that's where Esther lived, and that's where Mordecai lived. So, and I'm point that out because that's gonna come up again a little bit later on. But check this out. So it says on verse 15, it said, then Mordecai put on the royal robe of blue and white and the great crown of gold, and he wore an outer cloak of fine linen and purple. So what happened? Again, we see God's blessings come in. That was our number 3 point from the lesson that we went over as we went through this lesson, elevation. Guess what happened? He just got elevated. And not only did he get elevated, he got to walk around in the same things that Haman wanted. See, the same thing that Haman wanted, the same respect that Haman wanted, Mordecai got, and he didn't even have to fight for it. He didn't have to do anything for it. Only thing he did for it was stay faithful to God, and he got it. You see what I'm saying? So that's why it's important, y'all, to stay faithful. No matter what, people gonna hate on you. The world is gonna try to take you off your game, but just continue to worship the Lord, and the Lord will take care of your enemies. So the same thing, and that's why I said the next 2 chapters that we're going over is all gonna be about the victory that the Jews gonna get, and more specifically Mordecai and Esther gonna get, because they stayed faithful even though they was being hated on. So the very things that Haman wanted, he wanted to walk around in the king's robe and on the king's horse and all that stuff. But guess who getting to do it? Mordecai, because he stayed faithful, and Haman was fighting against God's people. You see what I'm saying? So it says, then Mordecai put on the royal robe of blue, white, and the great crown of gold, and he wore an outer cloak of fine linen and purple. And the people of Susha celebrated the new decree, and the Jews were filled with joy and gladness and were honored everywhere. So all of a sudden, the Jews went from being the most hated people in the land to being the honored people in the land. Because guess what? The queen is a Jew. The king is married to a Jew. So now they went from being hated to being honored. And that's what's going to happen to us on that last day. They said when that trumpet blow, it said the Bible say there's going to be a day where every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. And when that day happens, us, the ones that stayed faithful through it all, the one that kept putting our faith and trust in Christ, then let the world take us away from him, we're going to be honored. We're going to go from being hated in this world to being honored by the Lord our God himself. And that's what you want. That's what you want to work toward. Yes, it might be uncomfortable down here in this world. Yes, you might have to go through things that you don't feel is fair or unnecessary, but just stay faithful. Stay faithful. Stay faithful amongst the hate, and you will get the victory. And that's what we see here happening. And check this out. I thought this was funny as we end up chapter 8 right here. It says, now in every city and province Wherever the king's decree arrived, the Jews rejoiced and had a great celebration and declared a public festival and holiday. And check this out. I thought it was funny. Said, and many of the people of the land became Jews themselves, for they feared that what the Jews might do to them. So you see what I'm saying? They became Jews themselves because of fear of what the Jews might do to them. So they're like, I'm a Jew now. I can, you know what I'm saying? They jump ship real quick. It's just like you see folks jumping ship with these football teams. You know, one minute they love one football team, and then that football team will do good. They go to another one. You know, they jump ship. So these folks start jumping ship. They went from hating the Jews to want to be Jews. Because why? Because they knew the Jews had God's exactly. They became Christians. You know what I'm saying? Because they saw God's power, man. They saw God's power. They saw God's hand on Mordecai. They saw God's hand on Esther. Why? Because they stayed faithful. They stayed faithful. Exactly. That's funny. You know what I'm saying? It's so funny. They couldn't beat them, so they joined them. But that's what they did, man. They like, man, we Jews. I'm a Jew now. You know what I'm saying? They jumped ship real quick when the king put out the decree because they saw that they had favor. The Jews had favor with the king, so they wanted to be a Jew. And again, that gives us our number 6 point that we went over. And like I said, the lessons today is basically going to cover these 2 points. One, number 5 was victory over your haters, which we see in clearly they have victory over their haters. And number 6, a fear of the Lord will be upon you, man. You got to understand that the fear of God, when you stay faithful to God, even though people are hating on you, the fear of God will be on you. You won't have to fight your battle. You won't have to worry about your enemy. You won't have to worry about people backbiting you or try to undermine you because the fear of God will be on you. You know, and that's what we saw here. They had the fear of God. And it said, what did it say? And many of the people of the land became Jews themselves, for they feared what the Jews might do to them. It was the fear of God. They're like, man, you know, I'm a Jew now. You know, and like you said, Cam, they became Christians real quick because they saw, and it wasn't because, of course the fear was there, but I think it's mostly because they saw God working for his people. They saw God taking care of his people, and they wanted some of that. They like, man, this is real right here. This is real. This man, the Jews was nothing, and they went from being nothing to being the most honored people in the land just like that. And it was all because this man and his niece stayed faithful to him, even though they was being hated on for no apparent reason. So now let's check out how this all play out. Number 9, finally, we're gonna show you how the story play out, and we're gonna see. And matter of fact, this whole chapter is titled "The Victory of the Jews," because again, you get victory over your enemies when your faith and trust is put into the Lord. So it says on March the 7th, the 2 decrees were put into effect. So March 7th, so both decrees were still active. So the people of the land had the right to kill the Jews, but also the Jews had the right to kill the people of the land. But check out what happened though, because one of the decrees don't have God behind them, and the other one does. So it said, on March the 7th, the 2 decrees of the king were put into effect. On that day, the enemies of the Jews had hoped. Now that's the key word. Said they had hoped to destroy them, but quite the opposite happened. The Jews gathered in their cities throughout all the king's provinces to defend themselves against anyone who might try to harm them. But no one could make a stand against them, for everyone was afraid of them. So again, we see that's what happened when God is in your life. Nobody can stand to you when God is in your life. You know what I'm saying? Nobody can come up to you and do nothing to you. And the only thing that's going to happen to you is the thing that God wants to happen to you. And a lot of times when that happens, that's because he's trying to strengthen you, or he's trying to teach you something, or he's trying to humble you. You know what I'm saying? You got to understand everything that happened to you. If you're truly a child of God, that don't mean bad stuff ain't going to happen. That don't mean you're not going to have your bad days. But you got to understand everything that happens is for a reason. That's why, again, over in Romans 8:28, for we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. So you see that right here. So even though on March 7th they thought to eradicate the Jews, it said quite the opposite happened. It backfired on them because God is always going to take care of his people. And when people are out there plotting, the God haters are plotting on you and try to take you out of your game, just put it in God's hand and he will take care of it. So it says, no one can make a stand against them, for everyone was afraid of them. So once again, we see in verse 6, where it goes in verse 6, the fear of the Lord, our reward number 6, the fear of the Lord will be upon you. Everybody was afraid of them. They couldn't even stand up to them. Even though they had decreed to go ahead and kill the Jews, they couldn't do nothing with them because they was afraid of them. Now check this out. And even farther, this probably made them even more afraid. It says, and all the commanders of the provinces, the princes, the governors, and the royal officials helped the Jews for fear of Mordecai. For Mordecai had been promoted in the king's palace, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces as he became more and more powerful. So what happened again? We saw he got God's power. That was one of our rewards for staying faithful. We saw he got God's power. We saw he got elevated. And because of his power he had and the elevation he had, everybody was for the Jews. So where at first everybody was against the Jews, now everybody's for the Jews because they remain faithful. So once again, you see how important it is to stay faithful. We see because Esther stayed faithful, because Mordecai stayed faithful, they was able to save their whole nation and save the lives of all their family and all their people. And then not only that, they was backed up by the king and all his officials. So where at first everybody was going to eradicate the Jews, now the Jews had the power and they was able to eradicate everybody. So then it says, none, and then I think it's kind of messed up. It's kind of funny, but it's kind of messed up. But it shows what happened. So it says nobody really stood against the Jews. Nobody tried to attack them because they knew the king was for them. But it said in verse 5, it said, but the Jews went ahead. So they went on and did their thing anyway. Said, no, because I'm pretty sure they were like, no, y'all been talking all this stuff. What's up now? It's just like the dude that the talk crap over the phone, talk stuff on Facebook, and then you get in, then y'all meet face to face, and he want to back down. And Jews like, no, you been talking all this crap now. What's up now? What's up now, player? So watch what it says. It says, so in verse 5 it said, but the Jews went ahead on the appointed day and struck down their enemies with the sword. They killed and annihilated their enemies and did as they pleased with those who hated them. So they took them out. You know what I'm saying? Hey, y'all been talking all this crap. What's up? Because again, you got to think up until this happened, these guys, because this has been going on for a while. So these guys have been talking all kind of crap, probably making threats to their families. And I'm going to do this to your daughter when you're gone. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And he was like, the Jews like, no, what's all this stuff you talking, player? You know what I'm saying? So they took out their folk. So then now I got these names, but check out what happened again to Haman and his family, and we see what happened when you fight against God's people. So in verse 6, y'all gonna have to forgive me. I'm gonna try my best to pronounce these names, but these names in here are crazy. It says so it said they killed and annihilated their enemies and did as they pleased with those who hated them. They killed 500 people in the fortress of Susha. So that day they killed 500, and that was just in the king's palace alone. That was just in the kingdom where they stayed at alone. That ain't even the whole kingdom as a whole. They killed 500 people just in the land of Susha. So it says in verse 7, they also killed, and again I'm trying my best to pronounce these correctly. They also killed Parshandatha, Dalphon, Aspihath, Paritha, Adalia, Ariditha, Parmista, Arasia, Aridiah, and Zeazatha, the 10 sons of Haman, son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews, but they did not take any plunder. So they not only killed that day in the land, they killed 500, but they also killed all of Haman's sons that same day. So you see what happened. You see the comparison there. You see where you got the people that fought against the Jews, where they now, because Haman was fighting against the Jews, he was the enemy of the Jews, or in other words, God's people. And that's why I want to relate it to us today as Christians. The people that fought against us, that fight against God's people, what happened? Haman lost his life, and then everybody in his family lost their lives as well because he was an enemy of God's people. But we also see where Esther and Mordecai stayed faithful, and they was able to save the lives of their people because they stayed faithful to the Lord. So we see the comparison there. So then it says in that evening, in verse 11. Now check this out, and this is cold as ice to me. So in verse 11 it said, that evening, when the king was informed of the number of people killed in the fortress of Susha, he called for Queen Esther and said, the Jews have killed 500 people in the fortress of Susha alone, and also Haman's 10 sons. If they have done that here, what has happened in the rest of the provinces? But now, what more do you want? It would be granted to you. Tell me, and I would do it. Now check out this. Now we all know, Pat, I know you know there's a woman scoring. We've dealt with that in our past before. So check this out. Guess what she said? Now this is a woman score here because she was just low down. She in verse 13 said, Esther replied, if it please your majesty, give the Jews in Susha permission to do it again tomorrow, as they have done today, and have the bodies of Haman's 10 sons hung from the gallows. Cold-blooded. I'm talking, that's cold-blooded there. She said, I want another day of killing folks, and I want you to take his 10 sons that's already dead and hang them on the gallows. See, that's vengeful there. Now, you notice there's a difference between Joseph's story and this story, and that's why I want to do both of them, because it's a different kind of hate. Because you got to understand, in Joseph's story, That was just his brothers hate on him. They was out of jealousy. They didn't want to destroy Joseph. They just wanted to kind of knock him down a peg because they were jealous of his status that he had, because they thought that he felt that he was better than them. You know what I'm saying? So they didn't really want to destroy him, so to speak. They just kind of wanted to get rid of him so they can get Dad's favor. You know, but with this story, Haman actually was the enemy of the Jews. He wanted to destroy them. And that's why the things that happened to him and his family, like it happened. And again, she was cold-blooded, man. She said, give me another day of killing. You know, they done already killed 500, and he wanted another day of killing. You know, she wanted another day of killing. And not only that, she says, I want his sons hung on the gallows, because that's what he tried to do to Mordecai. So the king did it. So it says, so the king agreed in verse 14. Said the king agreed, and the decree was announced in Susha. They also hung the bodies of Haman's 10 sons from the gallows. Then the Jews at Susha gathered together on March the 8th and killed 300 more people, though again they took no plunder. Cold-blooded. I'm talking, and so you got to think about it. They didn't even take the money. They didn't even take the plunder. They were just killing just to kill. You know what I'm saying? They were just, again, getting back at their enemy. They're like, hey, y'all been talking all this stuff. What's up now? And they were just taking folks out. They didn't take none of the plunder. And each time they killed, and they're going to say it, they didn't take none of the plunder. They were just killing things to get rid of them, you know, because these people have been threatening them. These people, because you got to understand, they've been slaves too. So you got to understand, there's a lot of pent-up aggression that was there, you know, before the situation with Haman even started. You know, they probably been mistreated. So this was them getting a revenge for all them years, because they was in the land of Babylonia for 70 years before the Lord decided to lift the punishment that was on them and send them back to the land of Israel. So they was in the he wasn't gonna show no mercy. That's true. He wasn't gonna show no mercy, so they didn't show them any mercy. You know what I'm saying? So you gotta understand, they was getting a revenge for all these years. They had been there almost 70 years, and they was getting a revenge for everything that they had been put through. So they went and they killed all these people. Watch the number of people they killed. So in verse 16 it says, meanwhile, the other Jews throughout the king's provinces had gathered together to defend their lives. They gained relief from all of their enemies, killing, get this number, 75,000 of those who hated them, but they did not take any plunder. So they killed 75,000 people. That's a lot of people. So it's 75,000 plus the other 800 that was killed in the land of Susha alone. So altogether, you got almost 76,000 people that lost their lives because of, think about what all started this one man's hatred. So again, that's why you got to understand. Matter of fact, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But Monday, the lesson we're going to do, because we're starting, this is not going to be another series, but I'm going to do a lesson Monday on the importance of knowing your worth, knowing what you're worth. You know what I'm saying? So this one man and one woman was able to save this whole nation, but this one man, Haman, was able to get, because of his hatred, because he couldn't be just satisfied with what he had and the status that he had in his life, and he had this hatred inside of him, he caused 76,000 people to lose their lives, basically. All because of his hatred, because he couldn't keep his mouth closed, because he couldn't just be humble and be happy with what he had. You see what I'm saying? So know your worth, man, because you don't understand how much influence you have on the lives of others and the lives of all those people that are around you. So you got to be careful with that. So it said they gained relief from all of their enemies, killing 75,000 of those who hated them, but they didn't take any plunder. So they weren't even worried about the money or the loot. They just worried about killing their enemies. Because again, they had been slaves and they've been captives, and they've been treated bad for a long time. So this was something that they couldn't wait for it to happen. And when it happened, they had the advantage because God was with them. You know what I'm saying? And it sounds savage, and like you said, Cam, yes, Esther was a savage, but like you said also, he wasn't gonna show no mercy on them. Like I said, you gotta understand, up when March 7 came up, as it got closer, there were folks that was in the land like, ooh, I can't wait to March 7. I mean, they were probably threatening them, talking all kind of bad to them, saying all kind of things to them. They couldn't wait because they were gonna do the same thing to the Jews. But the problem was, the Jews were God's people. And no matter how bad the situation looked, no matter how dire things look, God is always going to take care of his people. And that's what he did. He showed up, he took care of his people. So on March 7, instead of his people being taken out, or being eradicated, the reverse happened. Matter of fact, he said in verse 17, he said, so throughout the provinces, this was done on March 7th. Then on the following day, they rested, celebrating their victory and a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews of Susha continued killing their enemies on the second day also, and then they rested on the third day, making that their day of feasting and gladness. So to this day, rural Jews living in unwalled villages celebrate an annual festival and holiday in late winter when they rejoice and send gifts to each other. So they made it a holiday. You know what I'm saying? They end up making this a holiday. This March the 7th is actually going to be March the 7th and March the 8th. They're going to make it a holiday because that was the day that basically God came and rescued them. It was almost like because every year they celebrate the Passover. That was the day that the Lord rescued them out of the land of Egypt. So this is kind of the same situation. This is the day where the Lord rescued them from their enemies, because their enemies thought to annihilate them, but instead God blessed them. You know what I'm saying? Same thing happened when the Jews, after they left out of Egypt, when they were going to the land, and the king, I think it's King Balak, he brought Balaam in to curse the Jews. But instead of Balaam being able to curse the Jews, he ended up blessing the Jews. That's what happened for God's people, man. This world is going to always look to tear you down, to do you wrong, to make you do anything to tear you away from doing God's work. You know what I'm saying? To do anything to take away your trust from God. But if you got to stay faithful, and if you do, God would always show up and protect his people. God take care of his people. It looks bad for us. What we're going through looks terrible. It's not comfortable. It's not a life of ease. I will say that much. But it's always worth it in the end, because you have God's power with you. So then, just to finish out the chapter, they end up setting up a day, like it kind of pointed toward here. They set up a day where they celebrated their freedom from their enemies. So it says it's called the Festival of Purim. So if in verse 20 it says, Mordecai recorded these events and sent letters to the Jews near and far throughout all the king's provinces, encouraging them to celebrate an annual festival on these 2 days. He told them to celebrate these days with feasting and gladness, and by giving gifts to each other and to the poor. This would commemorate a time when the Jews gained relief from their enemies, when their sorrow was turned into gladness and their mourning turned into joy. And see, that's from God. See, that's what God would do for you in your life, man, if you stay faithful. And y'all notice just about all of my lessons, everything I'm doing, and if you've been following me the whole time, you see all of my stuff is about staying faithful, because that's what you get when you stay faithful. What does it say? Listen to this. It says, when their sorrows was turned into gladness. You're going to go through things. You know what I'm saying? But God will turn your sorrows to gladness if you stay faithful to him. It says when their mourning was turned into joy. That mourning, they was mourning because they was about to lose their lives, but it was turned into joy because they stayed faithful to the Lord. So that's why it's so important to stay faithful. You know what I'm saying? It turns your sorrows to gladness. So the fact that you have sorrow, say things are still going to happen. Things are still going to go bad for you, but God will turn it into gladness if you stay faithful to him. The mourning turned into joy. You're going to lose some things. You might lose some family members. You might lose people you're close to. We might not understand why that kid had to catch that stray bullet and their life had to be gone so early. You know what I'm saying? We might not be able to understand those things, and we may mourn because of it, but God has the power to turn it into joy if you stay faithful. You don't let that thing take you away from God, but let it bring you closer to God. That's how you would get that joy. You see what I'm saying? That comes from God right there. That's why they sorrow was turned into gladness, and that's why their mourning was turned into joy, because they had God with them. And I want y'all to understand that. All right. So then in verse 23 it says, so the Jews adopted Mordecai's suggestion and began this annual custom. Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews, had plotted to crush and destroy them on the day and the month determined by casting lots. And the lots were called Purim. So that's how he picked the day, March 7th, because he just cast lots, basically shooting dice. It's another form of shooting dice, and that's how he picked the day, March 7th. He said, so he had determined to kill them by casting lots, and the lot was called Purim. But in verse 25 said, but when Esther came before the king, he issued a decree causing Haman's evil plot to backfire, and Haman and his sons were hanged on the gallows. So again, because she stayed faithful, because she had God's favor on her, because she was God's people, the evil thing that he had decreed, the evil plot that he had to kill the Jews, ended up backfiring, and him and his people lost their lives instead. See, that's what will happen, man. God will take somebody's evil plan against you and turn it back on them. And that's what happened here with this situation. They had this evil plot to kill all the Jews, but instead the Jews ended up getting a victory, and they killed all their enemies instead. All because God was with them. If God is for me, I repeat it. I've said it 2 or 3 times, but you got to understand this is a perfect example of what that verse means. If God is for me, who can be against me? And you got to understand, if God is for you, there's nobody can be against you, no matter how much they hate on you, no matter how much they talk bad about you, no matter how much they kind of try to bring you down, they can't if you're truly, and this is the key though, this is the key, if you're truly one of God's people. That is the key. Not just because, oh yeah, I believe in God. I know God, I go to church every now and again. No, if you're truly God's people, there's nothing anybody in this world can do to harm you. And if harm do come, and I'm not saying nothing is going to happen. Stuff can happen, but it's all part of God's plan. Everything that happens to you, God allows to happen. It's either to make you stronger, either to show His power in you, or show His power, humble you. I mean, there's certain reason why God allows things to happen, but everything is orchestrated of God when you're truly one of His people. And if He don't want you touched, then you won't be touched as well. And we see right here, He didn't want His people touched. And that's why, even though Haman came with this evil plot to try to kill his people, it backfired and his people ended up getting the victory because they was truly God's people. That is the key. I want to make sure y'all understand that. Not just because, oh, I know of God, I go to church every now and again. No, if you're truly God's people, you're truly serving the Lord, you're reading your Bible every day, you're praying every day, you're getting every opportunity you can to tell other people about God, then you're truly one of God's people, and His hand of protection will be upon you. Don't mean nothing bad's not going to happen, but it does mean that when it does happen, God got your back. So then to finish this out, it says in verse 26, that is why this celebration is called Purim, because it was the ancient word for casting lots. And again, casting lots was basically shooting dice. That's what they was doing back in the day. They was gambling. They was shooting dice. So then it says, so because of Mordecai's letter and because of what they had experienced, the Jews throughout the realm agreed to inaugurate this tradition and to pass it on to their descendants and to all who became Jews. So again, all the people that converted because they was afraid of what the Jews were going to do, now they all got the celebration where they can celebrate this day where the Lord rescued them. It said they declared they would never fail to celebrate these two prescribed days at the appointed time each year. These days will be remembered and kept from generation to generation and celebrated by every family throughout the provinces and the cities of the empire. These days would never cease to be celebrated among the Jews, nor would the memory of what happened ever die out among their descendants. Then Queen Esther, the daughter of Abihail, along with Mordecai the Jew, wrote another letter, putting the queen's full authority behind Mordecai's letter to establish the festival of Purim. In addition, letters wishing peace and security were sent to the Jews throughout the 127 provinces of the Empire of Xerxes. These letters established the festival of Purim, an annual celebration of these days at the appointed time, decreed by both Mordecai the Jew and Queen Esther. And the people decided to observe this festival just as they had decided for themselves and their descendants to establish the times of fasting and mourning. So the command of Esther confirmed the practices of Purim, and it was all written down in the records. So what happened? They got victory. The Jews got victory. They got victory over their enemies. These people, you got to understand this, again, from our perspective, these were the God haters. These were the atheists. These were the people that believe in this new age belief system, that believe in evolution and all this crap, this humanism. Because if y'all know, if y'all watch movies, any TV, humanism is a strong undertone of just about everything that comes out now. It's really, when you really in tune with God, and I ain't gonna lie to y'all, not that I'm just some super spiritual guy, but it's really hard for me to watch TV or any kind of shows these days because I see it. A lot of time we just watch stuff and we just going about our business. We don't pay attention to it. But I see when they have these undertones in there. I see the humanism that they sticking into everything. I see the do what you want to that they're sticking into everything. And they got us feeling like, oh man, if it feels good to you, go ahead and do it. You know what I'm saying? So it's hard for a man that truly serve God to enjoy TV these days because it always got to have some kind of sinful undertone in it, and it makes it hard. But when you got your heart completely focused on the Lord will take care of you. You know what I'm saying? This world is against you. These God haters are against you. They're gonna do everything they can to make you feel like an idiot for putting your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. Don't let them take you away from God. Don't let them take you away from your blessings. Because watch what happens. This is gonna finish up chapter 10. Is one little paragraph, and watch what happens. Watch the ultimate, and this is how the chapter ends. And it's the ultimate. It's the ultimate victory over Haman. Check this out. So it says in chapter 10, King Xerxes imposed tribute throughout his empire, even to the distant coastlands. His great achievements and the full account of the greatness of Mordecai, whom the king had promoted are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Media and Persia. Verse 3, check this out. Here you go. This is to show you the kind of victory God will give you in your life if you stay faithful. In verse 3, it says, Mordecai the Jew became the prime minister with authority next to the debt of King Xerxes himself. So what happened? He has Haman's position. So now he has Haman's land. He was able to kill Haman's sons. He has Haman's land. And now he has the very position that Haman had because Haman didn't take care of it when he had it. He wasn't happy with it when he had it. Haman was a blessed man. All he had to do was just live his life and be happy with what he had. Because he had so much hate and bitterness and pride in his heart, he gave all that away. And the very dude that he hated on, the very dude that he was hating there, he wanted to destroy, now that very same dude has everything that he had. He has everything that he wanted, and he has the respect of the king. So Mordecai not only has Haman land, he also had the same position that Haman had because he stayed faithful to God, and Haman was fighting against God. So that's what happened. Then it finishes out. It said he was very, to finish out the chapter and the lesson altogether, it said he was very great among the Jews who held him in high esteem because he worked for the good of his people and was a friend at the royal court for all of them. So see, because of the position he got, he was able to help his people out. You see, he's able to bless his people. When his people went to court, he was able to fight for his people, help them get a fair trial, so to speak, because of the position that he had and because he was a Jew. So all this came to him because he stayed faithful to God. And y'all notice Mordecai didn't really do anything special. He didn't do nothing special. He didn't do like Joseph did some really crazy things, some really faithful that took a lot of faith. He did some special things. All Mordecai did was stay faithful. That's all he did. He stayed faithful to God. He never turned his back on God, even though they was going through what they was going through. He just put his hand in God's will, and God blessed him, and he took care of it. And that's all we have to do, man. We don't have to be a Joseph. We don't have to be a Moses. We don't have to part the Red Sea to get God working in our life. The only thing we got to do to get God working in our life is to remain faithful to him. That's the key. Remain faithful to God. Remain faithful to the things, no matter what you're going through, good, bad, or ugly. If you remain faithful to God, God will bless you. He will fight for you. He will take care of your enemies. And I'll say it again as I end this. Romans, it says in Romans, if God is for you, who can be against you? And this story is a perfect example of that. This guy Haman, he sought to eradicate the Jews. He sought to kill all the Jews. He sought to eradicate this guy Mordecai. And what happened was Mordecai ended up getting victory and ended up eradicating him and his people and ended up getting the very position that he coveted it. The very things that he wanted, Mordecai was able to get because Mordecai stayed faithful to the Lord, even though he was being hated on by this man Haman. So again, y'all, the whole point of this lessons that I went over this and this is going to end the series, of course. But the whole point I went through this lesson is to help you see, one, a hater's going to hate. A hater, no matter what you do, a hater's going to hate on you. No matter what you do, a hater's going to hate. You can do everything you can to please them. They're still going to hate you. They're going to find some reason to hate you. A hater's going to hate. So don't let that take you out of God's will. Don't let that take you from these blessings that God will give you. Look at this favor that Mordecai had. Look at the wisdom that Esther had. Look at the elevation that Esther and Mordecai had. Look at the ability to accept God's will that Esther had. Look at the victory that the Jews got over their enemies. And look at the fear of the Lord that they had upon them because they were faithful to the Lord. All those came from being faithful to the Lord, and don't let the world take that away from you. Don't let that fear of what people are going to think about you. Don't let that fear of judgment from the world take you out of doing what God has for your life. But more importantly, not only that, make sure you watch yourself so you don't become a hater as well. Because we can do that. We can, you get seeing yourself hating people for no apparent reason because you feel they're better than you or something like that, then you better watch yourself because you see what happened to the haters in the end. In both of these stories, in the story of Joseph and the story of Mordecai, you see what happened. The person that was hated on ended up being the one that's winning. So watch yourself and be careful that you don't become a hater. But more importantly, stay faithful to the Lord. You stay faithful to the Lord, you get all these rewards. Not only that, you'll be able to make your world a better place, and you'll be able to make the world better for those people that's in your world because of your faithfulness and the grace that God will shine down upon you for being faithful. So I hope y'all enjoyed that, man. Like I said, I told you it wasn't going to be a super long lesson today. We just wanted to finish the story up. But we saw today, we focused on, we saw how they got the victory. We saw the victory is mostly what they went over. We saw what they went through, but we saw the victory they got because they lasted to the end. They kept their faith in God. And we saw Exactly, Cam. That's exactly. I agree with you. Nobody can claim to be a man of God and hate their sister and their brother. And you see what happened with Haman. He obviously wasn't a man of God because he hated his sisters and brothers. And of course, his sisters and brothers are everybody that's on this earth. You know what I'm saying? So again, it's so important, man. Stay faithful to God and don't become a hater to yourself, but continue to build your relationship with God so you can not only receive the rewards that God gives of being faithful, but you can also bless the people that's in your world. So that's it for this lesson. This, like I said, Monday I'm gonna do a lesson. It's not gonna be a series, just one lesson. It's gonna be out of the book of Judges, and we're gonna look at the man named Gideon. Most of y'all might know who Gideon is, but I really want to get to his story. And the whole theme of that lesson, I believe, is to know your worth. Understand what you are worth to God. Because the devil has a way of convincing us that we're nothing, that we're not worth anything, and God don't love us. And because of that belief, it makes us do the things that we do, and it takes us away from doing the work that God can have us to do. So the lesson I'm gonna do Monday is going to be knowing your worth. So I'm gonna do that Monday, and of course my ending. Thank you all for sharing the videos. Make sure y'all continue to share the videos. That's been such a blessing to us. You know what I'm saying, Pat? That's one of your ways you can get out telling other people about the Lord. Make sure you're sharing these videos on your page, or if you know somebody in your world. You never heard of Gideon? Oh my goodness, you got make sure you show up Monday, bro. You ain't never heard of Gideon. Whenever you go to a hotel. And in most hotels they have them Bibles in there. If you look at them Bibles, it says the Gideon Bible. It's a whole almost a denomination of people from called the Gideonites, and that's what they're for. They're about serving the Lord and getting the Lord's word out there. So if you never heard of Gideon, you'll like the story because it's a wonderful story. So make sure you tune in Monday. But like I said, man, continue to share these videos. Share these videos, tag people in the videos. If there's anybody in your world that you think they can benefit from these lessons, man, tag it. Because I wanted to spread. I had a good dear friend of mine. We talked yesterday, and he was giving me some suggestions and everything. He would give him some suggestions and everything to do, and I told him, like, man, I got to do my ministry this way, And he wasn't hating; he was just giving me some constructive criticism. And the things that he was talking about is things that I had considered, but I told him the reason why my ministry I do it this way is for a specific reason. You know what I'm saying? So I want this to grow. He's like, man, but if you do it this way, it can grow. I like, yeah, it can grow. I said, but I'd rather have 4 or 5 people that listen in that's truly trying to get a word from God than to have 1 million people listening in that ain't truly getting anything. They just want to listen because I'm popular. So, you know what I'm saying? But I do want y'all to spread. I do want this word to get out. I do want this ministry to grow. I do want it to spread. So y'all just please continue to share the videos and tell people about them. Tell your friends about them. Whenever I put the announcement out there, tag them in it. If you think they can benefit from it, tag them in it. But do what you can to help this ministry grow because y'all are a part of it, and I appreciate y'all and everything y'all do. I'm going to do that lesson Monday on the Gideon, and after that, I can go in the direction. So if anybody got any suggestions about lessons they want me to go over, let me know, and I'll start a lesson series on them. I got some ideas on which way I want to go, but if y'all got something specific y'all want to go over, just let me know. And of course, as always, thank y'all for the prayers. We got the things going on, getting a new church in motion, and everything seems to be working out there. So hopefully we'll be within our new building here soon. So thank you for the prayers. And last but not least, if there's anybody that's unsaved or know of any unsaved people that need to hear the gospel, that don't know 100% that they're going to heaven, please reach out to me, inbox me. My Facebook page is public, so you can find my phone number and call me. But do what you can to reach out to me, and I can share the gospel with you, so you can know 100% that you're going to heaven. And put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ, because that's the most important decision we'll ever make here on this earth. So again, I thank y'all for listening today. I thank y'all for bearing with me throughout this whole series. I hope it was helpful and beneficial, and I hope you see the rewards of staying faithful to God, even amongst the hate. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say prayer, and we're going to end this today. All right? Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, we come to you today. First of all, thank you so much for this wonderful series that we had. Thank you for the completion of it, Lord. It's been a wonderful series. The whole all 6 episodes have been pretty long, but all 6 episodes have been very interesting and show different aspect of you and your love and your hedge of protection where we stay faithful to you. But it also shows several different aspects of the rewards that we get from staying faithful to you, Lord. So I just thank you for putting this on my heart, showing me these lessons, and giving me the ability and the want to share it with my people that you've given me, Lord. We talked about in the book of John, there's certain sheep that's of the flock that's going to come to me because those are the ones that are meant for me to have. And I just pray you continue to give me the strength, the power, the wisdom, and the spirit to lead them in the right direction and help them say the things and guide them in the direction they need to go so they can continue to build build a relationship with you, Lord. As you continue to watch over my family, we got some important decisions to make here. My boys are graduating this year. We got some serious decisions to make here pretty recently, pretty soon. And I pray you just give us the wisdom, guide us in the right direction as far as that is concerned. I ask you to keep your hand upon our church as well as we making this direction on how we proceed further with the new church. I pray you just give us the wisdom for that as well. I pray you be with all those that watched this video today and watched all the videos, and hopefully they've watched the whole series. I pray you just continue to be with them and give them the wisdom they need to apply the lessons that we've learned to their lives so they can build a relationship with you and not let anything stop them, not let any hate stop them or keep them from doing your work, Lord. I just pray you continue to shine your love and grace down upon us, continue to bless us and guide us, and continue to love us and care for us as we continue to do the work that you have for us to do. We ask that you just continue to shine your love and grace down upon our families and friends, Lord. Send your spirit down upon them and keep them safe amongst this turmoil that's going on right now with this COVID-19 thing, Lord. I definitely put my faith and trust in you to keep my family safe and the family, the safety of all my friends and all my ministry as well, Lord. Because I know only you can protect us from these things, and everything is according to your will that's going on right now in this world. So I just pray just keep us all safe and protected, and I pray that you will just let your power be seen as you take care of this COVID-19 thing. And I pray just give out all of our officials, our presidents, our judges, the senators, governors, everybody that's in authority that'll make decisions, Lord. I pray you just be with them and just give them the wisdom they need to make the right decision to help this country get back to where it's need to be. But more importantly, Lord, I pray that you open the eyes of everyone from this country, Lord, and help us to see how far away from you that we've gotten, Lord. Help us to see that we need to get back to the foundation that this country was built upon, and that's the foundation of spreading your word and believing and trusting in your word, Lord. I ask you to be with all those in the military, keep them safe and their family safe while they're away. And I pray that you be with all those that's sexually or mentally or physically abused or misused, Lord. Just continue to give them the strength, give them the wisdom to get out of the situation they're in, and give them the wisdom to accept this that way out when it presents themselves. But also change the heart of the abusers so they might not do this evil thing, Lord. I pray you just continue to watch over all your servants. Give them your power, love, and wisdom in the work that they have to do. Give them your faith and your encouragement. And when their faith is tested, Lord, I pray that their faith fail not, and they continue to honor and glorify you with their work, the work that they're doing. And they don't not let anything from this world keep them from doing the work that you have for them to do. And last but not least, Lord, if there's anybody within the sound of my voice, anybody that's watching this video that do not know you as Lord and Savior, I pray that you would encourage them to reach out to me, Lord, or some preacher that can share your gospel with them, Lord. I pray that you humble their hearts and open their eyes to see the importance of the decision and give them the encouragement they need to make the decision to reach out so they can hear your gospel and they can make the decision to come and trust you as Lord and Savior. Continue to watch over this ministry, Lord. Continue to help us grow. Continue to watch over my family. Continue to use us. Continue to watch over my church people. Continue to help it grow and prosper. Reach out in community as well. But more important, Lord, just let these words sink into the heart of the people so they can continue to build a relationship with you. And be with all those that we've led to you over the years. Continue to help them grow in their relationship with you and let your spirit rest upon their hearts as well so they can continue to walk in your ways and want to be perfect servants for you. I love you so much. Thank you for this series. Thank you for letting us finish it out today. And thank you for these faithful ones that's listening in each time. And I pray that this series was a blessing and they will learn to be faithful to you amongst the hate no matter what goes on. We love you so much. Thank you for this day. And I say this prayer in your wonderful Son, Jesus' name. Amen. So I thank y'all for hanging in there. Thank Cam. Thank you for hanging in there, brother. I really appreciate you, man. Like I said, I'll try to check you out Monday if I'm not still going. And I almost forgot, y'all make sure if y'all want to catch up on any of these lessons or any of my sermons, I usually take, I try to put them on there within the week. But go here. This is my YouTube channel. Go there. And all my sermons and all my videos are on there. And you can reach them all through there right there or check out my Facebook page. So again, I love y'all all, man. Cam, be safe, brother. I'll be looking forward to Monday. You have a great rest of your day. Anybody else that's still out there, y'all have a great rest of your day. I love you all. I'm praying for you all. And remember to stay safe and watch your back and pray. Y'all have a blessed rest of your day.